Welcome everybody to Billionaire Acquisition Mastermind, the number one M&A podcast in the world. And I'm here with Michael Choo, who's my chairman, and we're going to provide you guys some insights. So very briefly, Michael, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Good to meet you. Glad to be part of this group and looking forward to learning and hopefully, giving some advice if needed about everyone and what we can do to kind of grow and be better at what we do and make a lot of money.
Absolutely. So let's start with, I got a couple topics in mind, Michael, focusing more on the starters, right? So let's talk about the first thing about getting this done is that you need a solid team to back you, correct? So
absolutely,
what would you look for in a team if you're looking to do a roll-up or looking to acquire businesses?
Well, obviously, there's a couple of factors that come into this. One, you want someone with experience and knowledge if they have it. If
Right.
they don't have it, obviously, one of the first things that you look for is someone's drive and perseverance. That is really the basis of success of any business model. The rest of the information, experience, and so on can in most cases be taught through mentorship, through other avenues, and so on down the line.
Right. So another thing I want to touch on is that the guys that you start with are not going to be the guys you finish with. You're going to eventually have to upgrade them as you go, right? People are going to fall out. You're going to find better candidates, or maybe they're not even going to hold up the test of time, right? We've seen that ourselves, Michael.
Yeah. So in most cases, you will see people drop off. You will go through a slight, what they call turnover rate. But I think it's really that never-ending process of looking for the right partners and what your goal and vision is in building a business and obviously a very successful business. But don't be afraid of that. It's something that happens. People always want to test the waters on the other side, and or in some cases, you or they may feel like they're not doing what they need to do to make what needs to get done successful. So it's part of the process. Know that will happen in every business. You can go from a 1% turnover rate to almost a 99% turnover rate. Both Valentino and I experienced that, but as you know, it's always for the right reasons. And in most cases, those folks usually go on and do better things as you will in your business.
Absolutely. Now let's talk a little about the compensation and structure of the board. One thing that is very important to note is that equity, especially starting out when the business has not produced anything and is not yet formed, that equity could be worth a lot depending on the business model or what they're looking to do, right? So you got to be wary of the amount of equity you give out to potential board members, correct?
That is extremely important. I think in the beginning, a lot of folks that from lack of experience and lack of doing due diligence and either being mentored or really learning about the process, they tend to want to give away the shop before there's any type of revenue or even potential revenue. And as an example, if let's say that the business model that you have takes off, but you gave away the shop, what happens is there's no room to really grow because there's other opportunities that come into place with, potential employees, investors, shareholders, etc., and there would be no room there. So be very systematic and diplomatic and cognizant of what you're giving away in shares from that standpoint.
Right. Now, talking a little on compensation, the first thing they'll be receiving is the post-transaction bonus, right? From the overfinance, we pay ourselves, we pay our directors, we cover professional fees. Then the last thing they'll be receiving is essentially the equity, once we liquidate, unless people are giving out dividends. They have to wait till they liquidate. But one thing I want to touch on, and it's something I told you, Michael, that we cannot build a billion-dollar company on half-time people. So having especially the members who are more active, like accountants, lawyers, CFO, CEO, on a salary role to get them full time would be the more adequate once we're cash flowing well, right?
That is more ideal in the model. If you want to start up as quick as you can, it's always good to have some type of capital if possible. It's not always impossible not to have capital, but to have capital and bring these folks in who are dedicated. And when you start with a base structure of particular staff that are pivotal to what you need to do, it's always good if you have the opportunity to bring them in some type of compensation, either salary or hourly type of positions.
Correct. Now let's talk a little about firms. There's one thing I asked you in the beginning. Do we need a big four for a first deal, especially if it's under $10 million? Does it make sense?
It really doesn't. I mean, if you were well endowed with capital funding, it wouldn't hurt, but it's not needed in the very beginning. As you grow, it's something you want to think about. It's not something you want to jump into right away. I think what you do is as you grow, you look at your budgets and stay within your budgets from that standpoint with the legal aspect of it. So I think, or any type of firm, could be a consulting firm, it could be a legal firm. You want to really kind of get folks that are experienced, but they don't really have to have the big name out there, because what you're paying for is the big name.
Correct. So we could do well with a specialized boutique firm to handle those lower middle market transactions, right?
Absolutely.
Great.
Without a doubt.
Now, talking about, is there a case where we could have the team handle the due diligence itself, or would you say it's better to have a firm to essentially stamp the document so there's a finger to point if anything happens?
I think from my experience, it's always good for the team members to, with experience, to start the first part of the due diligence, but always have the secondary stamp of approval from, as you know, the I's being dotted and the T's being crossed from a documentation standpoint. Don't assume that you know how to do that when you're starting out. Always get that experienced boutique person that you choose to help you with those legal documents and so on. Always review those documents for you.
Right. Let's talk about banks and funding. So as you know, with our model, Michael, we're looking to leverage commercial debt. Reason is it does not dilute equity, which is a plus. The other thing, the problem with investors that I see is that investors are risk adverse. With that said, if we're looking to do any major changes, we got to really present to them the reasons, the whys, how we're not going to affect their investment. But with banks, what I've noticed is as long as you're able to cover or service their debt, you have no issue. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Anytime you deal with most of the institutions right outside the bank, they have shareholders, they have, some of them have sub-private equity and so on down the line, where you have to, do basically what they call a song and dance to continue to justify their funding and return and et cetera. But when you're dealing with the banks, their requirements are very minimal. So it's ideal to go with that process and model first. But as you grow, eventually you're going to have to get into the private equity, joint ventures, and et cetera down the line.
Right. But by that time, we already have leverage. What I mean by leverage is we have capital, right? So
Correct.
another thing I want to talk about is that for our model, Michael, we're not looking to acquire real estate. Real estate skews up the numbers. It is not cash flowing. And like when we started in assisted living facilities, we saw facilities that were $10 million in real estate and just $1 million in the business itself. So taking that into account as we're looking to get a loan to finance these acquisitions, we want to focus on what are cash flow based loans. And banks are currently asking for 1.25 to 1.5 DSCR, but that also comes with a lot of assets as collateral, heavy assets, real estate or major equipment. So one thing I've noticed speaking with people is that if we could bring them a 2 times DSCR where we could service the debt twice, we got way more leverage in our options of financing, right?
Correct.
Perfect.
Yeah, you want to actually have leverage over them. So most definitely.
Okay, great. Now, private equity. Let's talk about those guys. Is it would you say it's not a good thing to do the first deal with private equity? From what I know, they're usually, because they have the money, they're going to take the majority of the deal, and you're now basically operating under their rules instead of you're independent, right?
Yes. So as you know, with the private equity, either firms or even just private equity funding, there's a lot of red tape attached to that. There is a way to do this in a separate model if it is your first deal. But what I mean by that, if it is your first deal and you're not having a hard time with your bank loans or whatever
funding.
other resource, your other funding that you're getting to, then make sure that, again, you work with a very, I wouldn't say, like I said, a name brand legal firm, but a legal firm that specializes in this, where this is the one-time deal. Remember something, the key is to get you on the map.
There you go. You heard it, guys. Now, let's talk a little about deal making, and this is big. You could get the board, you could get the firms to give you a soft yes. Everything could be set up. You could establish connections with banks, but the blood of M&A is deal flow. If you don't have a deal, you got nothing. So one thing I want to make clear is that it's a numbers game, and you've seen it, Michael, right? Can you provide some insights regarding that?
So Valentino, when we met, we kind of hit it off right away. We both basically have the due diligence built in our DNA. We have perseverance built in our DNA.
Absolutely.
And I will tell you right now, we have been through many, many deals. If you read on any of the folks out there, they weren't millionaires or billionaires in a day. They have failed more times than they have succeeded. They've succeeded this one time, which made them very well. And I will tell you right now, they succeeded this time because of all the times they failed. The problem with folks in the majority sense is when they fail 1, 10, 100 times, they give up. Rightfully so, okay? But if you want to make it out there with the Fortune 500 folks, they never give up. And they continue on until they find that one niche that makes them successful.
Absolutely. Now, I also want to talk about, Michael, you've seen it. They're last minute things that can break the deal, right? Can you provide some insights in that?
So I can tell you right now, some of the things that I've seen, some of the things that Valentino's seen, and what I've seen from my prior history is folks saying that they're fully transparent, and they're not. So when you finally get to the due diligence piece of it, you will find things and really take the time to do the due diligence, so you can look at the whole realm of the package deal. And we have found anomalies within some of these deals that obviously we chose to walk away from. And there are some times when the deal looks really well and we offer them too much in the beginning and they get overzealous. And that word that evil word, greed, sets in, and then they tend to want more and more from what the deal was originally scaled for. So be very careful on your communication. Be aware of what you're communicating, and don't over communicate.
Right, and let me provide some insights regarding that. I remember this one transaction we were working on with Samantha, and the thing was she was looking for $3 million. The first thing the guy told me, who's the CEO, who was running the business, that she was looking for $3 million structured at $700,000 down and the rest over 7 years, which I thought was great. He also told me she was looking to adopt 2 kids, and then he spoke to her recently, and she said she changed her mind. She wants $3 million up front. Now, we ran the numbers. It came out the $3 million out of 4 times, which we were able to finance. But myself, a beginner's mistake, I offered her $1 million over asking with a structure of seller finance. Now, there's one thing I learned. There's 2 reasons why someone sells: time or money. You structure something around that. Don't question it much. Because, yeah, we were able to offer $1 million over asking, but the problem was she wasn't looking to wait 10 years now. She wanted it all up front. So me taking into account the kids and her, thinking of it as a retirement plan, that broke the deal essentially. And when it comes to a point where they want the money, the majority up front, they got to pay for the convenience of having it. What I mean is that we can only pay what we can finance. So if they wanted 80% up front, we can only finance $1 million. And if they do with seller finance, we could finance $2 million. So if they want the majority, we can only give them what we could finance, right, Michael?
Correct. So you got to stick with the plan. And again, before you have any conversations with the other party, that you have reviewed a couple things. One, obviously the financials and in detail, and then 2, stick with the plan of what your offerings are.
Right. Now, what are a couple red flags to look out for, Michael? One, like you said, is the lack of transparency in the beginning. They try to suck you into a vortex. Reason they do that is because they know there's some red flags, but they want to present, the better part in the start, and then get you to waste or invest too much time into it, where the point now becomes a problem for all the parties involved, right?
Correct. So some of the red flags are, obviously, that you just spoke about that, Valentino, is when you ask for the financials and a business plan, they take time to get that to you. You've already signed an NDA by then. That should be already in either a specific room in a virtual that you can get to, or they either email it to you or fax it to you. But that should be there immediately, especially if they're motivated to do some type of joint venture or sale. If they are stalling on that, that should be your first red flag. The second red flag is during your communication process with them, you would think that owners, CEOs, and etc. would know every basic part of their business. When they don't, that's another red flag. You should be starting to really dig into more questions, look in more detail, and get really more granular in the whole gamut of the operations and the finances.
Right. Now, there was this one time you told me about this in regards to private equity. I still remember it. I remember everything. And I just want you to explain a little more. So that one time you were telling me about, it was like a private equity play where essentially they're going to fund us. They're going to provide us, a certain amount of money up front as working capital, and we'll receive a salary, but we're essentially doing the work for them, right? The roll-up. So can you touch a little on that?
So I have seen this happen to a good friend of mine who is actually very successful today still. I mean, this guy here started a business at literally out of his pocket was $5,000. His partner, who was a nurse, started a business and added another $5,000. So to make a long story short, they grew this business from one, and it's a healthcare business, hospital to 14 hospitals to 20 hospitals in a matter of about 9 years. So to make a long story short, they had a bunch of private equity folks in there that basically made them do, and they paid them a decent salary, but they're on salary. And although he was the chairman of the board and founder, he was not a minority shareholder from the private equity folks. And what eventually happened is although he still owned 11% and cashed out about $50 million, he lost his business because they ousted him out. They basically hostily took over his company. So one of the things that is very important in the back of your mind to keep in mind is to always keep that extra 1% as a majority, from 49 to 51% or whatnot. But you have to have some type of authority over that, or else these folks are just strictly about the numbers. And when the time is right, whether you want them to or not, they can hostily take it over. So make sure you have an ironclad percentage in the company, so that if it does happen, let's say by chance, you have to do that, but you have an ironclad 11%, 12% of the company, and they sell it for $500-600 million. You could do the math. You would still at least recover and recoup a good portion of the revenues and the profits. So, if you don't have that, you could be left in the dark. And moreover, people are left in the dark.
Right, absolutely. Now yourself, you are in the hospital industry, if I'm correct, very experienced in healthcare.
Correct.
I wanted to ask, what to look out for in the healthcare industry right now? Are there any major changes in place, or is everything business as usual?
Well, that's hard to actually answer. I've been in healthcare for 38 years. 30 years of that I've been in the C-suite. I actually owned a hospital in Shreveport, Louisiana. And if it was a year ago, I could pretty much map out what's going on in healthcare. But today, because of the pandemic and everything that's going on, healthcare is going to be an evolution of changes. I am hoping it's going to be positive changes. I will be confident to tell you this: healthcare, as I've always said, is not going anywhere. It's always one of the better investments out there. During the fall of the stock markets, and really that started in 2003, 2004, not really in 2008 when the recession started, healthcare was always the sure bet. Because as you can imagine, we all need healthcare everywhere we go, from clinics to hospitals to the different types of healthcare specialties out there. But I would say that the platform of healthcare is changing, and it's probably changing for the better, but it's not going to change once. It'll change over and over again until we can get through this COVID-19 and coronavirus and some of the political issues that need to subside a little bit.
Right, and COVID changed the game essentially in the way deals are done and, valuations for companies, because it affected a lot of their earnings, especially in that shutdown period during March. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, and there's a red flag, something to look out for, is that with the SBA giving out the PPP loans, I've seen businesses where these guys get these loans and they pump the numbers into a profit and loss statements, making it look as if it was earnings to bring essentially the profit margins up and the earnings up. The problem, if you make your offer on there without doing your diligence, is that you made an offer that is overvalued, because the next year you won't have that amount. So, it's not something that makes sense. Right, Michael?
Yeah, so before the PPE, especially in the state of California, we have what's called QAF funding and what they call disproportionate share funding. So what that means is, in the state of California, because we're a border state, we take care of a lot of the indigent and or Medi-Cal patients and those patients there do not cover the cost of any type of healthcare stay or surgeries or whatnot. So the states, not all states do this, they cover the cost. So whenever I look at a hospital and I'm looking at their financials, I always make sure that the QAF, which could be anywhere from 10 million to 50 million to 180 to 200 million, depending on the size of the hospital and the patient days. And the disproportionate share money, which could be anywhere from 4 million to 10 million, is carved out of there. Because what they try to do, it depends on what what they want to present. They can either add it to make it look like the financials either meet expectations or exceed expectations, or they subtract it to make it look worse than it needs to be for loans and so on down the line. So you really have to have a keen eye to be able to take a look at these things. And now you have the PPP loans, which I am absolutely positive that they're accruing through their months in their financials to make it look like they're performing better than they are.
Right. There's such a little on negotiations. And one thing I've noticed is that is about educating the seller as well. You know, I've noticed, especially if you're in the smaller, lower middle market, these off-market businesses that you're reaching out to, these business owners, this is the first time, you know, it might be their first time even considering selling a business. So it's not just about saying, hey, 3 times earnings, take it or leave it, but it's about, you know, giving them the bigger picture of what's going to happen with the transaction during and post. And what do you have in mind for that company and the growth? Giving them ease, peace of mind, and it's all about trust in business, right, Michael? Can you touch a little on that?
So, yeah, absolutely. As you know, I think when I have done acquisitions or was being acquired, it really is that connection with the potential buyer. That's why they actually do initial meetings, is to really see. We've actually bypassed folks that either were wanting to purchase the either hospital, clinic, or whatever a little bit more, or we passed up folks that were coming in that we always look at the reputation and try to work on a relationship, because you want a potential buyer that comes in to really kind of follow your dream, your philosophy, your mission for that particular institution, whether it's a business, whether it's a hospital, in that community. And the only way to do that is to really build that relationship with them and really see if that's a good fit. So the fit kind of works both ways. And it's really important to take the time to do that.
Absolutely. Now, the way I like to approach deals now, from my experience, just negotiating, going through the trenches, is you want to present it as a partnership, because partnership means mutual benefit for you and for me, even though in reality I'm taking over the business. So one thing I like to say is, you know, John or Michael, I'd like you to be a part of the business, or I'd like you to be a part of the growth without being the one shouldering the responsibility. And that's something they're very receptive to. You got to understand, it's not about these... a lot of people like to take a very dominant approach in regards to them, where it's like, hey, you know, take it or leave it, this or that. But at the end of the day, what I've noticed, smaller businesses, mom and pop, essentially, the business is their baby. The owner has an emotional attachment to it, and you got to talk about them both, not just the business, disregarding the owner, because they're both 2 in 1. And yeah, like we touched on, is about selling the vision and the growth and the future for a company. Now, moving on to deal structures, roll-ups, buy and builds, one-stop shops. So when I started out, we were talking about roll-ups, Michael. Now, what I know, what I noticed with roll-ups is that roll-ups have to be specific to a certain sector, and it has to be, and the geographics have to work, right? You're not just acquiring 18 different businesses. You're acquiring 18 of the same, and you're looking to build it into one larger company. So what happens in there is that there could be culture clash, right? Not only that, being able to find 18 or 12 similar within the same geographics, that's another challenge. So give me some of your insights regarding roll-ups, Michael.
So they can be done, but I don't recommend them to be done at once. I think you need to, especially if you're just starting out, to really kind of find that first niche that you're looking for. And by the way, any roll up can be done. It doesn't have to be the same type of business. It could be in the same company. You could have separate LLCs. There's really a lot of different ways to model it. But what's important to know is that don't overwhelm yourself. Start with the one. Decide how you want that second roll up to fit into your model. It does not have to happen right away. Do the research on the demographics to see if it makes sense to have that particular next potential roll up be in the same model or not. And like I said, it's not impossible to have it done that way. You could have it done in two different ways. One, it could be in the same business umbrella that you're in, but in a different company category. Or you can keep it separate. Again, based on the demographics, it's really important. That's where the due diligence comes in your demographic area that this particular business is that you were thinking you want to roll up, that if it would make sense or not. You don't want to not do the due diligence, and you don't want to roll something up that doesn't make sense demographically to fit, that doesn't fit in that umbrella, or it'll fail.
Right. Now, remember I spoke to you recently about the buy and builds in one-stop shops, and I see it as great growth models for what we're looking to do. You know, basic example with a buy and build is that we buy a physician office, and we see that that physician office has multiple rooms. So what we look to do is bring in other physicians that work in conjunction with the service that is being offered there. So essentially, we're offering multiple services under one roof. And we want to take advantage of the part of that people would rather buy multiple services from one trusted provider than just buy one and figure out the rest. It allows for customer maximization and customer retention, where they don't have to go, 2-3 miles to find another place that could offer that service. We can offer multiple under the same roof. So what are your insights on that? How do you see those?
So that's the new model that's actually out there. You either have one big lease and sublease. You can actually have time shares, basically, in these areas where they rent certain times, i.e. hours or days, and et cetera. Yeah. So really, you have to be open to that model. It does work. And if you can meet the needs of either the community or the customers, it's more ideal to have it in one area as opposed to them going to 15 different places.
Right. And then the other one would be a one-stop shop where essentially we're building a brand, right? Let's say we're building a brand for physician offices where let's say there's 10 different physician offices for 10 different body parts. We're looking to acquire as many as we can and expand in all areas. But the thing that sets it apart is that it's a brand. So there's a set standard of operations. People trust the way we operate, and that's why they go there. And I see that as a great advantage to eliminate competition, right?
Absolutely. And that's where I was talking about. But believe me, there's a lot of, so we're talking healthcare. There's a lot of physicians out there that don't want the overhead, meaning buying a building, maintenance of the building, et cetera. Right. Where if they work under your brand, your logo, and they lease or sublease with the understanding that they're working under your logo, that really fits it's a win-win for both the owner and either the physician or the PA or whatnot.
Right, because, these physicians or doctors, they just focus on servicing their patients. They're getting their money for the business they bought. If they're involved, they're getting a salary. And essentially, we're covering expenses. Not only that, we maintain a more dominant position in the marketplace, and we could weather any market effects. If somebody's losing revenue or they need something, we got money to play with, right? So it allows flexibility. Now, Michael, I want to ask a couple more questions. They're a little more personal. So I wanted to ask you, why did you join my board? What set me apart from everybody else that spoke to you, maybe about the same or with the same idea, a concept?
Well, I got to tell you, as you know, Valentino, as transparent as we are together, I've spoken to other people that have the same concept, but there's a difference between having the same concept and when you speak to someone, them really believing in it. And the
Right.
difference between you and the other folks is that conviction of, one, believing in the concept, two, knowing that we need to pivot when we need to pivot based on um, the never-ending changing of the business environment, that we're able to do that. And then three, obviously the the culture you had in the sense of not giving up. And believe me, there's a lot of folks out there that they have that passion in the very beginning, and it fizzles out real quickly when the first thing that happens goes south on them, and you can tell they're already giving up. Valentino right away has I am not giving up attitude. That's not in my DNA, and this is going to be successful no matter what. And it's so no matter what piece that really attracted us to be partners.
Absolutely. And like I say, and people don't talk about this much, but the true foundations for success is your ability to adapt and improvise. You've seen my growth
Absolutely.
and what I've learned throughout this time. When I started, I did not know much, and I told you I'm also looking for you to be my mentor, right? I have knowledge, but there's
Yep.
no substitute for experience. But I went out there and I'm putting in the work, and it's been months, and I'm still with that fire. So, because I see the end goal,
So let
and
me
as you know,
tag
we're
on to
getting
that.
closer. Yeah,
Yeah, let me tag on to that, Valentino. So Valentino and I met, gosh, I think it's about 6 months, 7 months now, right,
yeah,
Valentino?
yes.
And if any of you didn't know him then, I wish you would have. I know him now. He's um, beyond a totally different person from the business aspect. Um, his growth has almost, he's at the point of having many, many expertises in different areas. So the next step, and believe me, we went through many different improvising challenges and so on in those 6, 7 months. Um, but the next step right now is our next venture of success.
Right, getting our deal done. Now, as you know, is the hurdle of the first deal, right? And I see
Correct.
that as preparation for what's to come. Because one thing people have to understand, this is not just a buy a business and retire. No, we're looking to complete the model and exit. If you don't do that, you don't even start, right, Michael?
Correct. Follow the plan.
Follow
When
the
the plan
plan
gets started, now,
until completion at that end. So
correct.
you've seen the deals we've gone through, right? I even remember reading you my scripts and pitching them to you, and you providing me insights. And I'm gonna tell you, the way you learn is by doing. The more calls you have, the more people you speak with, you find better ways to word things. You figure out what they're actually interested in, what they're not. You trim a lot of the fat, essentially, right, Michael? Go straight into a meat.
Correct.
So,
The only way to learn
mhm,
is to have time in. That's it.
right. And I wanna touch on, like I said, this is not a get rich quick thing like a lot of gurus are talking about. You're looking to build something, and building something great takes time. The first deal is the hurdle. But like we talked about, Michael, growth is exponential after that. Once we get our first deal done and we overfinance, we got a capital pool. We're investing in getting a deal team. We're gonna have people ringing those phones, and I'm gonna focus in what I'm good at, negotiating and getting deals done. And that's the only way we're gonna advance and grow and take it to a next level, right?
Absolutely. So again, it takes the whole team to have input, and I know Valentino's very good about that. Sometimes doesn't take the team to initially start the process, but at the end of the day, it takes a team to really kind of sit back and look at the pros and cons, which will make it successful at that point.
Right, and another thing about the team is that when you have these deals under LOIs, you get your board meeting, you start presenting them, and you start getting insights from based on their experience. Now, Michael, do you have any words of encouragement for those who are starting out, and they see the light at the end of the tunnel, but they also know that the tunnel's a long, long, long walk to make it.
So some of the, I guess, advice I can give is, especially for those that are starting out, for those that have done it, God bless you, and that's absolutely awesome. For those that are starting out, learn as much as you can from other people's mistakes. Learn as much as you can for those that are successful. And as you know, for some folks, those that are successful keep it very close to their vest. So really learn from those who made mistakes. Don't give up. Everybody that has been successful has gone through this journey of failure, which made them stronger and is the reason why they are still successful today. So you don't ever take it personal. There's times when it may feel like that, but this is business. If you have that passion and drive for this business and you continue on through some of your failures and continue to learn through that, you will succeed.
Absolutely. Guys, let's open it up for a Q&A. Any questions you guys have. And Michael, if we could finish on a little story. Remember what you told me about one of the guys you knew that sold this company, and I think he wanted to do it again, and he just walked into Wall Street, signed his name, and walked out with the money ready to go.
So when you get to that point, and this is what I try to tell, or I had a discussion with Valentino about, there's going to come a time when you will become successful. And when that time comes, don't ever forget who you really are inside of you, because a lot of these folks do. So there's a colleague of ours in healthcare who built a huge empire, and he ended up selling it for close to $600-700 million. And they were hospitals. There was 22 of them, and he cashed out literally probably close to $150 million.
Wow.
And because he kept a good reputation and good standing, he was within 5 years after his no compete ran out. He could walk straight into New York to all the investment bankers there, to all the private equity. They would fight for his business because they knew how successful it is. He could walk out of there with his signature with a $800 million, $1 billion line of credit without a blink of an eye. And that's actually what he did to start another healthcare corporation.
You heard that, guys? It's all going to come to a point if you keep pushing forward. You're going to be able to walk into Wall Street, walk out with your signature and $1 billion line of credit. And that's how you make things happen. So Chrome had a question. Do you normally have an integration specialist on your staff for roll-ups, or do you normally use a third-party firm? Well, we got a guy who's a roll-up expert. His name is Todd Seufer. We also have an M&A advisor. But for roll-ups, I think the team can handle that, Michael, right? It's mostly just advice on the structuring of the companies.
Right. You should be able to handle that internally. By the time you did your first deal and your second deal, your folks should be able to know the process of the acquisition. And, basically some of the just nuances is, if it's a demographic outside of either the county or city or state, just to know their particular, laws of acquisition and so on.
Absolutely. Let's end it here. Michael, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming on this podcast. It was amazing to have you. The people are very grateful for that. I'm going to send you a link as well so you can check it out. But I appreciate it, okay. Michael. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Stay diligent, everybody out there. You got folks like Valentino and other folks that want to help you become successful. That's what it really should be. If you think about the billionaires out there and they say there's only 0.01% of them in the world, that tells you there's plenty of room for each and every one of you to strive for that goal. So stay
Absolutely.
with it and don't give up.
Absolutely. Michael, again, thank you very much, and we're moving forward. Later down the line, we'll have a little update video. So, hey, again,
sounds great.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Guys, Billionaire Acquisition Mastermind, #1 group in the world. Who else is doing this? Tell me a name. Nobody. So stay tuned. Next week, we got some hot stuff cooking up. We're going to bring in bankers and brokers, and we're going to run through some mock-up deals. Essentially, we're going to get these deals, analyze the financials, figure out how to structure them, how to get it financed, what it takes to close on them, and let's get this going. Remember, 2021 is the year, and COVID isn't going to last forever. So if I was you, I'd pull the trigger. If you're looking to become a member, go to our website, billionaireacquisitionmastermind.com, and click the membership tab, or message me directly, and let's get you going. It's about, associating your